Hi, I'm David Pounds, Chair of the Art Department at Palm Beach Atlantic University. In this video, I'll be showing you how to use Illustrator and Photoshop to create a custom steampunk style logo. The steampunk logo I want to create begins in Illustrator. I'm going to assume you know more than the basics of this program, so I'm not going to take you step by step through every little detail. If you're looking for a more beginner experience, you might want to check out some of the other videos on my channel. This is what the logo looks like when it's ready to go to Photoshop. Let me hit Command-Y on a Mac, Control-Y on a PC to show you what it looks like in the wireframe. I'm really just interested in transferring the vector shapes over to Photoshop, so the colors here are not really a factor. Here's how I got to this point. A project like this starts with typeface choices. I felt a serif face was most appropriate to a steampunk typographic style, but knowing what I want to do later in Photoshop led me to choose Bernard Roman, which has the nice blocky serifs I'm looking for. Now I'm going to analyze the word, looking for places to condense the spacing between letters or connect two letters together to form ligatures. The focus will be more on style rather than legibility. The right side of the U and the left side of the N are good candidates for combining into one element to tie together two letters, as are the right side of the A and the left side of the M. A linkage between the S and the T is also a possibility. Any typeface that has Pro in the name of the font family usually has an extended character set that includes the most commonly used ligatures. I can see all the characters that are available in a typeface by going to Type, Glyphs. Here I see all the alternate characters I have at my disposal. Notice an AE ligature has already been included, as has an OE combination. Good to know, but not helpful in my case. I'm going to look at all the characters to see if there are symbols or parts of letters that I can Frankenstein onto my steampunk letters to give them a more custom appearance. Now I'm going to Option Drag to make a copy and then put it off to the side. I find it helpful to make copies of the different stages of the process. When I go to Type, Create Outlines, the letter forms will become vectors instead of a typeface. I can no longer make spelling changes or know exactly what point size I started with. Should I need that information later, I can just look at the unedited typeface copy. At this point, I'm going to be using the white selection tool with the text in the outline view. Among other things, the white selection tool allows me to select portions of the vectors or individual points and delete them. I'm clicking and dragging to select the points I want to eliminate. Then I hit delete one time to get rid of them. Repeating this process leaves just the part of the letter I want. Now I switch over to the black selection tool and click on the letter. Notice that all the letters are selected because they stayed grouped together when I converted the word to outlines. After ungrouping, I can select the individual letter and move it to the right, holding down the Shift key after I start dragging to ensure that the baseline stays lined up with the other letters. I can use the arrow keys to nudge this right or left, but a Command-Y switch to the preview shows that this ligature looks good just the way it is. I'm satisfied with this ligature, so I want to take the two separate shapes and make them into one shape. I do this by selecting them both, then go to Pathfinder palette and click the Unite button. This makes them one shape rather than two shapes grouped together. This is a subtle but important distinction. I repeat this process with the A and the M. I use the white selection tool to isolate the points that need to be deleted. Once again, I switch to the black selection tool to move the M over to the left. As I look at the spacing, I see here it is a little too tight. So I'll move the letter back to the right, then zoom in and extend this line just a little. Ideally, what I want is the space on the right to be even with the space on the left. Let me tweak it a bit more, and then I can unite them with the Pathfinder. The ST ligature is going to be a bit more of a challenge because it isn't just a matter of deleting points and moving the two letters together. What I need to do is use my pen tool and draw in the connection in a way that matches the style of the typeface. This time I will select all three shapes to unite them with the Pathfinder. This process results in a few too many path points. If I want it to be really smooth, I can use the Delete Anchor Point tool, found under the Pen tool, to remove the unwanted points, then adjust the curve to my liking. Now that I'm looking at this, I want to do a ligature down here between these two serifs. I'll zoom in so I can see what I'm doing, delete the parts I don't want, then select these 2 points and hit Command J to join them together. Now I'll take these two, move them down a little, then go to Object, Path, Average to move these 2 points on top of each other. Adjust them to smooth them out, and this one as well. I want to make sure these points are joined rather than just being on top of one another. So I select them both and hit Command J, the keyboard shortcut for join. Now I'm using the Convert Anchor Point tool to change this from a corner point to a curve point to get the joint to smooth out a bit. I think these will look better higher, so I'll just adjust the points until I'm satisfied with the results. Now that I'm finished with the ligatures, I want to adjust the spacing of the rest of the letters to get a nice tight grouping. With the black selection tool, I click on the ST ligature and move it to the right. I'm looking for a consistent space between the letters that looks good optically, but not necessarily mathematically. Because of the way the different letter shapes interact with one another, I can't just measure the spacing. I have to position it by eye, and the ability to make those kinds of decisions well is something that only comes with practice working with letter forms on a regular basis. Let's come up for air and see how it's going. It needs a bit more tweaking, but I'm well on the way to where I want to be. The ligatures and the spacing are fine at this point, but I want to add a bit more of a custom character. This is an area I'm considering for modification. This is a character you can find on the top left of your keyboard, and just about all fonts will have it. Since it's from this typeface, I know the style is going to match. I convert this character to outline, then move it up to see if I can use it to replace the serif on the P. It looks too close, but I can solve that problem by extending the descender, which gives me more room to play. The left side is fine, the right side needs some work. With my white selection tool, I select these points and move them down. Using the usual method, I then select them both with the black selection tool and combine them with the Pathfinder. I'd like to see these transitions be less abrupt, so I'll use my white selection tool to round off the corner. This procedure is new to Illustrator CC. If you have an older version of the program, you'll need to add curve point anchors and adjust them manually. Now I can use the white selection tool to select the points that make up the new serif and move them up into just the right spot, not too high, not too low. Now that I'm happy with the overall structure, I want to create an outline that ties everything together. The best way to accomplish this is to copy all the letters, Command C, then paste in front Command F. The blue dot on the top layer indicates what is selected, so when I click and drag the dot down, I transfer the copy to the lower layer. I'm going to change the color so you can better see what I'm doing, but the color doesn't really matter. I'm going to add a stroke to the bottom copy. The thickness of the stroke determines how far away from the letters the outline will be. Using the stroke palette, I assign a 12-point thickness. I think this is going to work, but you can play with it, making it more or less to suit your taste. This is an issue I'm not happy with, so I solve that by having the stroke palette create soft corners rather than sharp corners. Now I'm going to turn off the top layers so you can see what's happening. In the outline view, I don't see the stroke thickness. With the shape selected, I'm going to Path, Outline Stroke. Now the thickness of the stroke shows, which means it's permanent. I can't go back to the stroke palette and change it. I only need the outside line, so with all the lines selected, I go to Pathfinder and join them all together. With the white selection tool, I select the remaining inside shapes and delete them. Now I select the remaining line and assign a stroke color of black. Command Y to toggle to the preview mode, then turn on the top layer to see what I think is a very nice result. I missed a little problem here, very easy to fix. Just select it with the white selection tool and delete it. I want to create inset pieces for one of my ligatures in the custom serif, here and here. I could draw them freehand with the pen tool, but I think I'll get a more accurate set of lines if I use copies of the existing forms as starting points for shape-to-shape blends. I've already converted this to an outline. With the white selection tool, I delete the right side, then the left side. It's important that each side of the blend have the same number of points. With the pen tool or the Add Anchor Point tool, I add an additional point to the top line. Now each anchor point has a corresponding partner on the other line. I want the two lines to be assigned strokes but no fill color. I also want to make sure the two lines are not grouped together and not part of a compound path. Now I change the blend mode from smooth color to specified steps and set the number of steps to 1. Blend the two lines together to get this result. In order to access the middle line, choose Object and then Expand, then use the white selection tool to delete the top and bottom lines. Switch to the wireframe once again and drag the line into position on the custom serif. It fits perfectly on the horizontal, but it's a bit too long here and here. With the scissors tool, I can snip the ends, then use the white selection tool to select the end sections and delete them. So we can see what's going on here. I'm going to make the stroke white and bring it to the front. I think the end caps will look better rounded off instead of square, and I can adjust that here in the strokes palette.
I'd also like this line to be a little bit thicker in the middle than it is on the ends. To accomplish this, I use the width tool to click in the middle and drag down. It's important to understand that this shape profile exists in Illustrator. Once I bring it into Photoshop as a vector, the thick-thin aspects of the line will disappear if I leave it in its current form. To solve this problem, go to Path, Outline Stroke. This will transfer over to Photoshop exactly the way I want it to be.
This inset is going to be more complicated. Using the Group Selection tool, I highlight the ligature and Option drag to make a copy. Then use the White Selection tool to delete the points I don't want. Again, I want to keep in mind that each path must have the same number of points, they must not be grouped together, and they need to not be part of a compound path. I need to use the Add Anchor Point tool to even out the number of points. Let's get out of the wireframe into the preview. Now I go to Object, Blend Options, change to Specified Steps with a step number of 1. Come back again to the menu to make the blend, or use the Mac keyboard shortcut of Option-Command-B. I repeat the previous steps of expanding the appearance and deleting the two original paths to leave just the new line. Assign a white stroke, then drag it into position on the ligature. select a rounded end cap from the stroke palette, zoom in, and use the width tool to make it thicker in the middle, being careful that it matches the look of the custom serif inset. And finally, path, outline stroke. For the next step, I want to create a series of circles to represent the rivets holding the letters together. I've drawn the first one and positioned it in the middle of the ligature inset. I'm going to select it with the black selection tool, then drag it as I hold down the Option key, which makes a copy. As I begin to drag, I also hold down the Shift key, which constrains the movement to just the horizontal. With some tweaking, this is what it looks like when it's finished. These are the vectors that are going to give me the Photoshop selections I need to add some really nice effects to this logo.